Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and today I want to talk about the challenges of regulating a massive global company like Facebook. Now, if you follow me, you know I am not a fan of Facebook, but being a global behemoth that is used by billions of people around the world literally every single day does have challenges, since each country has its own unique set of standards and laws and requirements for a company like Facebook to essentially adhere to, which means having a universal platform shared by all is obviously very difficult when one country has data privacy laws over another. Now, some news out of Kenya a couple of days ago actually prompted me to think about this, and so I wanted to do a video/podcast on this, and this is coming from TechCrunch, and here's what's going on. Kenya's ethnic cohesion watchdog, the National Cohesion and Integration Commission, or NCIC, has directed Facebook to stop the spread of hate speech on its platform within 7 days or face suspension in Kenya. Now, the watchdog was reacting to a report by advocacy group Global Witness and Foxglove, which is a legal nonprofit firm, which has basically pointed to Facebook's inability to detect hate speech ads. Now, this comes as the country's national elections approach. Kenya is also going through elections right now as well. Now, the Global Witness report corroborated NCIC's own findings that Meta, Facebook's parent company, was slow to remove and prevent hateful content, fanning an already volatile political environment. And we'll talk about that in a moment here. Now, the NCIC has now called on Meta to increase its moderation before, during, and after the elections, while giving it 1 week to comply or be banned within the country, which, quite frankly, would probably be the better choice overall. Now, among the mandates of the NCIC, which was formed, and here we go, after the 2007 post-election violence that left 1,300 Kenyans dead, basically, their job is to make recommendations on remedial action against entities or persons perpetrating hate speech. Now, a few months ago, it banned the use of some coded words that said to be fueling ethnic tension. Kenya, if you didn't know, obviously has in its history a whole bunch of different tribes within its borders, and obviously there are tensions between those tribes. It's led to sectarian violence, all these kinds of things. It's obviously a huge, huge problem. Now, according to NCIC Commissioner Donvis Makori, and I quote, "Facebook is in violation of the laws of our country. They have allowed themselves to be a vector of hate speech and incitement, misinformation, and disinformation." And yeah, I have to agree with Mr. Makori. They're the same thing here as well in various ways. But we will talk about this, and inevitably I'm going to get somebody that says, well, Nick, how do you define hate speech? We'll talk about that in a minute. Now, Global Witness and Foxglove also called on Meta to halt political ads and to use quote-unquote break glass measures, the stricter emergency moderation methods that it used to stem misinformation and civil unrest during the 2020 elections. If you recall, especially after the January 6 riots here at our capital, Facebook moved very swiftly to start banning and cutting off a lot of that information, but they've since eased up. I've talked about this extensively, that Facebook's own political moderation teams that are basically the election watchers of Facebook, their budgets have been slashed, their staff has been slashed. There's something like 90 of these guys for the entire world, including Kenya, the United States, and every country in between and all around. So that's obviously a huge problem. Now, in Kenya, Facebook actually has a penetration of 82%, making it the second most used social network in Kenya after WhatsApp, which is also a Facebook product, which is just basically direct messaging that Facebook alleges is secure, which I've talked about is actually not. Now, Facebook's artificial intelligence model failed to detect calls for violence. To test Facebook's claims that its AI models can detect hate speech, Global Witness submitted 20 ads that called for violence and beheadings in both English and Swahili. All of those except for one, meaning 19 of those ads were approved. And yes, calling for violence and beheadings of those that essentially are not you, meaning, let's say I'm Christian and I'm calling for violence and beheadings against, I don't know, Muslims or Jews or take your pick. That is hate speech. I consider that hate speech. Obviously, that's a huge problem. You can disagree with people. We can have nice civil discourse. But when you have 1,300 people killed as a result of in Kenya as a result of a political election, or people here trying to break into a capital calling to basically hang the vice president, those are very tough things. And so I think that trips up into hate speech. Overall, again, I'm not getting into that debate. Now, the human rights group It says that it used ads because, unlike posts, ads go under stricter review processes and moderation processes on Facebook. They could also take down the ads before they went live, meaning they weren't about to actually post something that everybody following them said, yeah, let's go behead the other side of Kenya or something like that, for obvious reasons. But Facebook should have caught this. English obviously is Facebook's primary language. Most Facebook employees are there. Obviously, they have employees that are looking at moderation in other languages, but they've had problems with that over the years. War crimes are being committed on Facebook groups by selling basically stolen entities or stolen property or stolen art from war zones, and that was basically being conducted in Arabic as well as, I believe, Farsi. And quite frankly, Facebook couldn't moderate it because they didn't have anybody that did that. I have no idea if they have anybody that speaks Swahili on their staff, but if they're in Africa, you would think they would speak Swahili, Nandi, and like any of the others, not to mention the other languages that are permeated throughout Africa, and there are a lot of them. Now, Global Witness said in a statement, and I quote, "All of the ads we submitted violated Facebook's community standards, qualifying as hate speech and ethnic-based calls for violence. Much of the speech was dehumanizing, comparing specific tribal groups to animals, calling for rape, slaughter, and beheading." And remember, 19 of 20 of those ads were approved by Facebook. Now, following the findings, Alva Lee, the leader of Digital Threats to Democracy campaign by Global Witness, said, and I quote, "Facebook has the power to make or break democracies, and yet time and time again, we've seen the company prioritize profits over people." And yes, 100% yes, Alva Lee, I 100% agree with you. I've talked about that at length. This is something that is a huge problem. But it comes to the issue that we were talking about, that I initially started talking about this, and that essentially is, how do you regulate a company like Facebook? There are no global standards for this. Some countries are completely okay with this. I mean, look at what happened in Rwanda. We literally had an attempted genocide between the Hutu and the Tutsi. So these are the kinds of things that we really have to understand, we really have to look at, we really have to moderate. But it really, I think, underscores the point as well, is that even though Facebook has all of these challenges, Facebook itself isn't really seeming to do anything, because if their moderation in English is fine with basically calling for tribal violence from one tribe to another, saying, hey, our tribe should go rape, murder, slaughter, and behead the other tribe, and they are not catching these things, that is absolutely insane. I have personally, every time I put out something negative against Facebook, on my public Facebook profile, I try to run an ad. I'll flip Facebook $5 to get the message out on why Facebook sucks, and a lot of times they take it. But anytime I've ever tried to boost a post that, let's say, has something in political content as a test, meaning like, hey, like, this is what we saw in cybersecurity in Washington, D.C. today, they never let those through without saying, okay, we're gonna have to validate your identity. I can understand that they're worried about things like foreign actor and infiltration and intelligence operations, putting out disinformation, but why aren't they worried about that in a country where basically their entire population, over 8 out of 10 Kenyans, are using their platform? I think this is absolutely ridiculous. And so this is the challenge of basically regulating a company like this, especially a company that really literally prioritizes profit over humans, meaning we are going to see political violence in Kenya. Facebook's not keeping this in check. So at the end of the day, I think the safest thing Kenya can do is ban Facebook altogether. I'd be a fan of that everywhere in the world. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter, where your human rights apparently can be violated overseas. Not to mention follow me at YouTube as well, where I don't think they can be, but I don't know. I haven't really looked into that one yet. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please attempt to stay private. Thanks all.